Thank you so much. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me and for letting this be my abstract and my speech. Poor man, I was driving him absolutely nuts by not sending him an abstract, but I think he seems to have survived. So I'm probably a little bit schizophrenic in the sense that I'm standing here as a human rights lawyer, as well as somebody who works within the UN system. So I'm going to try to give you a little bit of an idea of how the GCM is actually a very good tool in implementing in existing international standards, as well as talk a little bit about the various roles that we have as agencies and what a rights-based approach to migration actually means and how it has developed over these past years. First of all, I think I'm going to pick up something that Elspeth says, and that is that there is this unfortunate surprise when you say that human rights applies to all, no matter what their migrant status is, no matter what their nationality is. A lot of people seem to think that this is a novelty, which is a little bit shocking because human rights is something that we have as human beings. I can illustrate this with a horrible little anecdote that I was at a conference once and I was speaking about the human rights of migrants, and somebody came up to me and said, yeah, but I mean, the human rights framework doesn't really apply to migrants, does it? And now an ex-colleague of mine standing next to me trying to be clever and said, oh yes, it's just that it becomes soft law. At that point, luckily, I was standing with a glass of wine in my hand. It was down very quickly. So I think that we do need to address this knowledge gap. And I think it's not only about migrants. Honestly, we need to make rights relevant to everybody again. Because within the international system, I think we have taken for granted that people understand what human rights are actually all about. That it's something that touches upon us every day in our daily lives. People think that the UN and human rights and international instruments is something totally abstract, something principles floating around somewhere. They do not think about the fact that they have sent their children to school, they have had something to eat, they go home to an either heated or chilled apartment, depending on the season, they go to university, they go to the doctor. All of that is having your rights respected. And a lot of those of us who have grown up and lived in such protected environments for our entire lives seem to think that we deserve it. And seem to also take it a slightly tiny bit for granted. I think that migration should open our eyes, and the lack of rights granted to migrants should open our eyes to the fact that we need to stand up for our rights. Because migrants, legally speaking, have the same human rights as non-migrants. If non-migrants allow a group of people to be targeted in the political debate, in the public debate, legally speaking, then we are starting out on a slippery slope that sooner or later is going to influence all of our rights. If we don't stand up for labor rights for migrants, well, then we will see our own conditions slowly be eroded, because there seems to be an acceptance of the fact that rights don't apply to all. There is the saying, they came from this, and this person, sooner or later they are going to come for us. So there is a need these days to really hold firm and stand up for everybody's rights. Not because we need to be nice, but because it will impact us if we don't do so. I think that the point that Marcel made about the rule of law is extremely important, because people do not see the rule of law as a protection of their rights. They don't understand that simply the fact that we can walk down the street in peace and prosperity, not feel threatened, is because we live in societies where rights are generally being respected. And that if you start not respecting the rights of some people in those societies, the rule of law and that security will disappear. So having a rights-based approach to anything is also about making rights relevant for everybody, about the narrative, which these days is, well, quite frankly, appalling when we talk about migrants, and basing that narrative in facts again. Not only in numbers, but in a narrative where we say, look, if migrants come and work here, if they don't come in legally, then they are not going to pay the same sort of contribution to social security schemes. They're not going to pay the same sort of contribution to pension schemes. And at the end of the day, you, as a non-migrant, depend on contributions being made to social security schemes, to pension schemes, so that you can benefit from this. So it's all about having a broader narrative. And the GCM is good in that respect, in the respect that it looks at migration very broadly. As some say, it's very segmented, but it's also from a point of view of those who need to implement better migration governance. It does actually have these many objectives, and it does connect them. If you take an example, we want to get people out of migration detention. Migration detention is being used around the world as a migration management tool, and if you use the principle of proportionality and necessity, it's probably in most cases actually illegal. But we cannot ignore the fact that many states feel that this is a necessity for them. They don't know how else to control where people are. So if we want to really attack, that's kind of more work, but if we want to tackle the use of migration detention, we need to get a lot of people out of that group who potentially can be detained. How do we do that? By having more legal channels of migration, by involving our labor ministries in saying, what is it that we need labor-wise, labor market-wise here? Why don't we allow people to come in legally? Already we've taken a chunk out of the people who are moving irregularly, who are forced into using the services of smugglers, who end up being exploited in a trafficking network. So we take that chunk out and we look at the legal migration objective. Then we need to look at protection of vulnerabilities. But we also need to look at, do we create vulnerabilities? By not having legal channels of migration, are we pushing people into the hands of smugglers and traffickers, and thus actually making them vulnerable? So the GCM, in my opinion, is very good in the sense that it forces us to look at how various policy issues are connected, and how we cannot only focus on one objective if we want to have better migration governance. Now, if we talk about the GCM from a human rights perspective, I think it's quite clear that the international legal framework protecting migrants' rights is there. If we had tried to push for another legally binding instrument, first of all, in the current climate, it wouldn't have passed. But I think more importantly, not having a new legally binding instrument is a recognition of the fact that the current existing international instruments are applicable to migrants. If you simply look at the 9 Core Convention for Human Rights, they are applicable to migrants. Trying to push for something new would somehow have said, well, yes, but what we have then actually isn't enough. It is enough. It's the implementation that is faulty. And the GCM should help us in having better implementation of the rights that are already guaranteed for everybody. And that feeds into the SDG 2030 agenda, which is a leave no one behind agenda. I can say from personal experience in one of the many working groups we have in the UN, which is a working group or task team, or one of the other catchy terms we use these days, on having a leave no one behind agenda implemented in all the UN country teams. So that no matter where in the world, when the UN agencies come together, they have in mind that they need to have a rights-based approach in order to be inclusive, in order to tackle inequalities. Both the GCM and the SDGs are tools to be used so that we can tell people what is it that you actually need to focus on, what is it that you actually need to do in order to live up to your international obligations in protecting human rights. And Elspeth mentioned also some of the many actors that are mentioned in the GCM. From a UN perspective, I think for a very long time we have considered that our main stakeholders and our main operational partners are central government. The fact is that a lot of very good practices are being done at a local level. So municipalities around the world are doing an amazing job in, for instance, integration. Because at the municipality level, you see that having discrimination, not respecting rights, is actually detrimental to your little society. And you need to have that little society work. And you can sort of circumvent some of the nationalist blah blah that's going on in the central government. Same thing goes for private sector. We are seeing more and more need to involve the private sector and making them realize that they have a very strong voice in protection of rights. When we speak to the private sector, they very often say, but we need migrants. Yes, but then come out and say it loudly so that your central government cannot implement policies that goes strictly and completely against your national business interests. Trade unions, I'm sure Richard will talk more to the importance of having solidarity between national workforce and migration and migrant workforce, simply because, again, the lack of respect for rights of a certain part of the workforce will impact also the national workforce. And we don't want that. We want to have rights for all. Now, we have to also address the concern of the sovereignty aspect that Elspeth also mentioned. For sure, there is these days, and we go back to the narrative and the facts, there is a discourse saying that the GCM or human rights, generally speaking, if you want to implement them as we should for migrants, it's an attack on the sovereignty of states. States enter into international agreements, international treaties, because they have the sovereignty to do so, right? That is how they enter into these obligations. Now, protecting human rights is, as a state, your obligation. You are the duty bearer. Now, how can be protecting rights of somebody go against your sovereign interest? There is nothing in the human rights framework or in the GCM saying that you need to adapt a certain form of migration policy. You are still, as a state, within your sovereign right to determine your migration policies. The only thing that you cannot do, obviously, is send people back somewhere where they are in danger. Now, what we would like to see and what the GCM can probably help with as an implementation tool is to have better, more long-term migration policies. Is to stop working in silos where only the Ministry of Interior is responsible for migration issues, but coordinate with Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, and Labour Ministries. Because very often the labour ministries are actually not involved in migration policy development, which is absolutely absurd. So it is more a question of having better migration governance, which will also help us avoid situations that we had with the European migration crisis, where all of a sudden there was an influx of people that legitimately some states didn't really know what to do with. Because if we have more long-term policies, a number of people migrating for work purposes will be in channels that are already legally established, where people are then moving regularly and safely. This also goes directly to combating smuggling and trafficking, because if we have more legal migration pathways, we are attacking the business model of the smugglers and the traffickers. Now, I also want to just mention a little bit about the UN network. The UN network is more than just implementation of the GCM. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the previous animal, which was the GMG, the Global Migration Group, which was a gathering of agencies who worked on migration and came together and, in theory, was supposed to coordinate their efforts. Didn't work extremely well. The UN network is part of the UN reform, and it's a parallel process, but obviously it's linked also to the GCM in the sense that the network is going to look to the GCM when it sets its priorities. It is supposed to be working groups between the various, or composed of the various agencies, which have a time-specific objective, which for the UN is important because otherwise we can go on forever discussing things without really reaching anything. So time-specific objectives. Right now there is a proposal of having 16 working groups. I'm fairly sure it's going to be less, otherwise it's going to be completely impossible to manage. And the secretariat of this network sits within IOM, but it's not an IOM network. What's good about this is that just as national governments very often work in silos, the UN has been known to work in silos too. And the idea with the network is that on an issue which is so cross-cutting, we actually start to really work together and have OHR leading on things that are legislation on human rights aspect, ILO leading on things that concern particularly labor migration, WHO leading when it is something that is particularly on migration and health, but obviously then with IOM involved since we are the migration organization. So the idea of this network really is to cut down the silo walls. It is definitely true that IOM for a very long time was not known for its rigor in upholding human rights.
It's an understatement, sorry.
Well, but it is the truth. We were not known for that.
Yeah.
I think that you will see if you go to our website, for instance, that we have a manual out on a rights-based approach to migration management. We are now a related agency to the UN, which in itself perhaps has not changed our status or our raison d'etre incredibly, but with migration being recognized as something that clearly needs to be better governed and governed with a rights-based approach, so that has been recognized within IOM. And even if our constitution dates back to 51 and reflects that, there are a number of internal mechanisms put in place now which really ensure that out there in the field, because we are such a field-based organization, people know that we need to have a race-based approach in our programming and in our projects. And again, both the GCM as well as the SDGs are going to help us internally in doing so. Because even if rights are not specifically mentioned in every single sentence, both have a rights-based foundation. And it will help our officers, both in their advocacy work as well as in their own programming and projectization, say, hey, we need to report on this, and in order to do so, we need to use other tools, such as the Leave No One Behind guide that's coming out, such as our own rights-based approach toolkits. So in that sense, I think that the GCM really needs to be seen as a roadmap to better migration governance, and to say that its strength is that it's recognizing that the international standards are there and needs to be respected, and this is simply a tool to do so. Thank you so much.